My name is Derrika Hunt, and I'm a PhD student in the School of Education.
My name is Samara Steele, and I am a graduate of the MFA in Nonfiction Writing from Portland State University. Have you ever altered your behavior, style of dress, plans out of fear for your physical safety to avoid harassment or sexual assault?
Yes, all the time. I think there's something very specific about being Black in America. And I spend a lot of time traveling to other countries. And what's interesting is I'm only worried about my physical safety as a Black woman in America. I'm always aware you're Black. What area are you in? What neighborhood are you in? If it's late at night, how will you be perceived? How will people, look at you? And I think especially with the Black Lives Matter movement happening now, seeing so many Black people being killed just for being Black. So the objectification of the Black body, the policing of the Black body, how we are now bodies. And I don't know that I even have the right to exist or take up space in this world in America.
But are there any personal stories to elucidate that experience?
Well, I have so many, especially growing up in a really low-income neighborhood. My neighborhood was policed a lot. And I just remember even walking to and from school, my mom was always like, you come straight home, you do this, like there are rules just to exist in this society. And I think the most recent example was about maybe 2 years ago, I got pulled over by the police and I was freaking out. I'm like, I'm by myself, I'm a Black woman. This is a white police officer. I'm in the middle of nowhere. And I remember the officer just saying, okay, girl, just even that dehumanizing act of calling me a girl. And he didn't physically assault me, so I'm grateful, which I shouldn't even have to be grateful for something like that. But it was one of many. I think it's one of those things where you have a file cabinet. As a Black woman, you can open the drawer. Which experience do you want?
What you said about being frightened, like being pulled over, just reflects, I think, the experience of many low-income women. In the apartments that I grew up in, there were stories about the police doing things to women when they'd come for domestic violence cases, and those stories were always silenced.
I'm always clear that I think my race impacts my life far more than my gender does. I think, and especially being Black, I think we conflate person of color with Black, and there's a very big distinction I think made in the American context. I think there's anti-Blackness and there's white supremacy. So I think there's a specific way the Black body is policed in comparison to other people of color. And I think when you have that physical identification of being Black, it's like your melanin convicts you before you ever open your mouth. Have you ever been the victim of physical or verbal abuse based on your sexual orientation?
I don't know. That's just such a convoluted question. I feel like there are a lot of complicated personal stories and dramas that I'd have to think more about.
Yeah, I think I've had many experiences of being sexually assaulted and victimized. It's like our bodies are tools of pleasure and anybody can do what they want to us, and then a lot of times they aren't even convicted.
While walking down University Avenue at sunset, at 5 p.m., I actually experienced an assault last year where someone pinned me against a picnic table and started, trying to assault me, and I had to fight him off. And, it was, I smile about it because it's just become so common in my life.
The saddest day I remember was when I realized a lot of things that had happened to me were assault. And growing up, I thought they were normal because everybody I knew had been going through them. And it was just like, oh, well, it's like comparing wounds. Me and my friends are like, oh, that happened to you, that happened to me too. Okay, that must be normal. And then being in a college classroom and having a teacher say that's rape, that's sexual assault.
I had a one-on-one meeting with a community college professor who offered to make my grade be an A if I would, I think, touch him. He made some obscene gesture, and in the middle of class, he actually walked up to me and rubbed his crotch against my waist, and 3 classmates saw it. And they were male classmates, and I had one of them later say that He was like, oh yeah, don't worry about that professor. He just has yellow fever. And I'm like, oh, so you think I'm Asian, I'm actually Native American, and whoa.
And I think that speaks to like this society, like rape culture, and I think it's a global phenomenon because it's always the woman having to not wear a short skirt, not being in a dark place. I should be able to walk out of my house naked and nobody should touch me. And I feel so strongly about that for myself and for other women. What I look like, how I dress, how I speak, if I get too drunk, those is still my body, and you should not be able to touch me without permission.
So what does privilege mean to you?
I think there are a set of advantages that certain people get and others are denied. And I think the biggest problem with the privilege is that it intentionally excludes other people.
Something I've been thinking about in terms of privilege lately is how there's a degree of privilege involved in even being able to talk about privilege. Mm-hmm. It's almost like it presupposes that you're no longer in this position of privilege. It's this metropolitanism where you're just like an alien looking down on society from outer space, like, oh yes, there are these privileges, and it is so depersonalized. And I suppose for people who have a lot of privilege, it becomes this very abstract thing.
I think it's being able to be free and exist in this space without the constant worry of if your life might end. And I think Peggy McIntosh did a really good job of summing privilege up as like this backpack where you have all these tools in it. And as a white person or somebody that's not a person of color or as a male, you have this backpack with these tools and you have an advantage. Whereas the rest of us, we don't have the backpack, so we have to start from scratch, and it's really difficult.